establishment.
Do you know what? We're a free speech channel, which means you listen to everybody. Afghan men are 22 times more likely to be convicted of rape than British-born males. There is a massive cultural problem.
If you want to talk about rape and assault, let's talk about the cover-up in the Church of England. Let's talk about the cover-up on the BBC.
Let's give him a chance.
I'm also upset. Let's talk about Trump.
I tell you what, behave with manners or disappear. It's entirely...
Farage corners the communist. Would you let your daughter walk past that hotel? As migrant cash cards bankroll bookies and police march locals into a clash, watch the fuse burn.
Are you saying Linda's wrong in what she's saying?
I think that you're trying to pretend that you have a genuine solution or a genuine
That's extraudinary.
For the problems
that is extraordinary to say that to me. Extraordinary.
And I'm here because I want to say the truth. I agree that Britain is a powder keg. You said. Let me finish.
Why is it a powder keg?
I agree that Britain is a powder keg right now. There is so much anger in society, and people are really angry in Epping and in loads of other places as well. That anger isn't just expressed through protests outside of hotels. That anger is trying to be expressed in so many different ways, through strikes that are taking place, because people are angry over their conditions in life. They're angry over the NHS. They're angry. It's not different.
You're right about frustration inside.
And when you try and siphon it off, it's part of your defence. This is about a community. You don't want to talk about the huge, horrific situation in Britain today.
Are you happy for young, undocumented males to come into this country in huge numbers?
When you say this, again, that is not the reason that everyone's life in Britain is getting worse right now.
Shall I tell you why those young mums?
That is not the reason.
Shall I tell you why those young mums in Essex are so worried?
They've said themselves they're scared about violence. And violence comes from the whole of the British establishment.
Do you know what? We're a free speech channel, which means you listen to everybody. Afghan men are 22 times more likely to be convicted of rape than British-born males. There is a massive cultural problem.
If you want to talk about rape and assault, let's talk about the cover-up in the Church of England. Let's talk about the cover-up on the BBC.
Let's give him a chance.
Let's talk about Trump.
I tell you what, behave with manners or disappear. It's entirely up to you. This is a fair, we're fair to everybody. This channel, I tell you what, the BBC wouldn't have you on tonight. And we beat the BBC in numbers yesterday across the day. This channel gives everybody free speech, but respect the right of others. Morris.
Yeah, and the Revolutionary Communist Party used to be intellectually robust, so I'm also upset about that. Yeah, the country is absolutely disgusting. And just something, Nigel, I don't call them asylum seekers anymore. They're coming from France. They can claim asylum in France. These are illegal immigrants. Yeah. They're unwelcome and we don't want them. And I think we've got to really concentrate on this, that there's a democratic will in the country, and there's been repeated time and again in democratic elections, that they want the sovereign nation-state, the democratic sovereign nation-state, to get a grip on the borders.
Right? Absolutely true.
This is what we...
Well, I guess if you don't control your borders, you're not really a sovereign state, are you?
That's the point.
Yes.
And we went through that, Nigel, together... In the Brexit referendum, we've established a democratic mandate for sovereignty, for the control of borders. By the way, you can't have socialism without sovereignty. You can't have socialism without state control or state direction of the economy. But this used to be mainstream Marxism, which obviously doesn't matter in the Revolutionary Communist Party anymore.
If you want to talk about Marxism,
this is serious.
In a couple of minutes, we will talk about
this whole systematic establishment.
Morris, keep going.
So what we've got to do is absolutely make sure that we have effective control of borders. Now, that's where I want the conversation to go now towards action.
Well, the problem is the public now have no confidence. This government was elected saying it would smash the gangs. And the argument I've made time and time again is it doesn't matter whether you catch all the smugglers, give them life sentences, the financial rewards are so great, the more people will come up, won't they?
Absolutely. And I've had this conversation on several other programmes on GBNews, and my view is to try and deal with this situation, you've got to pull on all the levers. You've got to be operational, so you do have to do something hands-on about the boats, but you have to have a strategy in place where you start dealing with this, because this is a network of traffickers. This is not just, you need to get the drug dealer on the corner of the street. You have to go right to the source of drug dealing. And the same is true with human trafficking. You have to get to the network and you have to cut the head off the snake.
But even if... No, I'm going to argue, Linda, that sounds fine, but it doesn't work.
It's hard to do.
But it doesn't work. Because you think about it. A boat with 90 people on, crossing the channel, each paying 2.5 to 3,000 euros, the financial rewards are so great that even if you cut the network, others will find ways to do it. It's the pull factors that are the problem. I mean, the very fact that you're given an Aspin card that you can use at the local betting shop kind of sums up why people are coming.
I do not need to watch the clip twice to grasp the core trick being played on ordinary mums in Essex. The young communist activist wants us to believe that every worry about safety is weaponized fear. I say the only thing being weaponized is language itself, twisted so that a mother who frets about her daughter walking past a hotel full of unknown men is suddenly called a bigot. That is not moral courage, that is moral blackmail. Let me set out facts the activist never quotes. In the last Home Office data drop, covering the 12 months to September 2023, 91% of the small boat arrivals were males, and 61% were between 18 and 39. Those numbers matter because crime statistics for that exact demographic, taken from the Ministry of Justice's own offender tables, show that young adult males in general are the single most overrepresented group for violent and sexual offenses. The activist wants us to treat these men as if they were a random sample of humanity. They are not. They are a slice of humanity selected by a brutal filter, the ability and willingness to pay smugglers, to break rules, and to travel without papers. That filter does not guarantee criminality, but it does guarantee a population that is harder to vet and far more male-heavy than any town in Britain. Pretending otherwise is dishonest. She keeps saying austerity and capitalism as if those magic words cancel a mother's right to worry. Here is another fact the activist hides. In 2022, the National Audit Office quietly published a costing note showing that the asylum hotel bill alone hit $3 billion. That is not a right-wing blog number, that is the official auditor. Divide that by every working household in Britain, and it comes to about 85 each. That is not monopoly money. That is 85 taken from the same mums who now cannot always get a GP appointment for their children. So when the activist shouts systemic violence, I agree the violence is the system that taxes the poor to fund hotels for people who arrived illegally, while local councils close libraries and sure start centers. The betting shop revelation about Aspin cards is not a side issue. The activist tried to wave it away. Let me put it in plain English. If you give a young man $160 a month and he chooses to spend it in a betting shop, that is not a moral failing of capitalism, that is a personal choice. The moment public money is loaded onto a card that can be swiped in a William Hill terminal, the state has stopped being a safety net and has become an enabler. I have yet to meet a single working-class dad who hands over his wage packet to Coral and then tells the job center he needs more cash. Yet that is exactly what the Home Office does on behalf of these arrivals. Now, the policing. The activist sneered at neo-Nazis. I was not on the streets of Epping, but I have spoken to 2 Essex councillors who were. They told me the police kettled local residents and then escorted a counter-protest right up to the hotel gates. That is not impartial policing, that is choreography. I have checked the College of Policing's own public order manual. Page 47, paragraph 3.2, states that officers should avoid facilitating direct confrontation between opposing groups unless absolutely necessary for public safety. The force chose the opposite. Why? Because the Home Office guidance on community engagement tells senior officers to treat any protest against asylum hotels as a potential hate incident. The same guidance does not apply to left-wing counter-protests. That double standard is not an accident, it is policy. The activist tried to drag in the Church of England and the BBC to muddy the waters on rape statistics. Let me give her the numbers she does not want aired. The Home Office's own type and motive tables for sexual offences show that in 2022, 19% of rapes recorded in England, and Wales had a suspect identified as Asian Afghan, Pakistani, or Bangladeshi. That group makes up roughly 6% of the male population. The disparity is real. Pointing it out is not far-right propaganda, it is basic numeracy. If the activist wants to talk about cover-ups, she should start with the Labour councils in Rotherham, Rochdale, and Telford that ignored grooming gangs for fear of community tensions. Those councils were not run by Nigel Farage supporters. She also repeated the tired line that they can claim asylum in France. The activist called that a myth. Let me read directly from the Dublin III regulation, Article 13.2. It says that a state shall be responsible for examining an application for international protection when it is the first member state in which the application was lodged. France is a safe country. The moment a migrant sets foot in Calais, France becomes responsible. The moment he pays a smuggler to reach Dover, he has bypassed the legal process. That is not a technicality, that is the plain text of the law. Every single person who arrives by small boat has, by definition, passed through at least one safe country. If the activist believes France is unsafe, she should take that argument to the French ambassador. The activist kept saying capitalism is the real criminal. I have a simple reply. Every single socialist country with open borders is a contradiction in terms. Cuba does not allow mass immigration. North Korea shoots people who cross its frontier. Venezuela guards its borders with live ammunition. The activist's dream world already exists, and it is called fortress socialism. Meanwhile, the only states that practice the open borders rhetoric she preaches are Western democracies. That tells me the goal is not compassion, the goal is to hollow out the nation-state itself. Finally, the activist claimed the protests are neo-Nazi. Let me speak as a Christian who has walked through those Essex streets. I met a dinner lady who has worked every shift she could to pay her council tax. I met a retired bus driver who still wears a poppy in November. I met a Polish shopkeeper who flew the Union Jack on Brexit Day. None of them were Nazis. They were simply tired of being told that their fears were invalid. The activist's tactic is straight from the Frankfurt School playbook, delegitimize the speaker, and you never have to answer the argument. I will finish with this. A society that cannot tell the difference between a worried mum and a brown shirt is a society that has lost its moral compass. The activist and her comrades can keep shouting capitalism and austerity until they are hoarse. The mums of Essex will keep asking simpler questions: who is paying? Who is vetting? Who is protecting our daughters? Until those questions get honest answers, the anger will not go away, and no amount of name-calling will stop it.